Good evening, viewers. This is a very special day. After a break of more than 2 months, I'm back with the Sudhir Mishra show. This is episode 1 of the season 2. Now, in this season, we have very interesting format. We are trying to bring the breakthrough lawyers who have created practices out of nothing and who were people who actually started a queue behind them. They were early trendsetters and they decided that the practice which they will develop, others will follow. Let me introduce you to Dr. Pawan Duggal, one of the topmost cyber lawyers of the country and one of the most respected seniors I have in the legal fraternity. And Dr. Pawan Duggal, let me tell you, you were my senior and I have been watching you, seeing you when both of us were going to trial courts and then the High Court and other places. One thing which I learned from you very early, and many of my friends say the same thing, that how you were so focused about technology. And you were so focused about technology as much as Narendra Modi is today focused about technology. And also how it created and fueled a very specialized practice for you. So before we go to that journey, what was your childhood like? How did law happen to you? How the legal career started? Where did you start? You were from Delhi and other places. We just want to know your early history.
Thanks, Sudhir, for having me with you on your distinguished show. I've been following your show, and congratulations on the impact that the show has already begun to have on the minds of the legal fraternity. Well, to begin with it, life, I believe, is always a constant journey. And I have obviously been very ingrained in spiritual values. So I believe that we are here for a particular role that's already been predefined. We often don't have any control over the flow of life per se. I began my life in a middle-class family. My father was a lawyer. And as a youngster, as I was going up in school, I was enamored with the legal profession primarily because of the massive influence that my father had upon me. But mind you, we were pretty much insulated at that time. There was no television, there was hardly any phone. And more significantly, those were the days where you had only set examples of lawyers practicing in courts or being judges or at best being in-house counsels. Now, I did my schooling from Delhi Public School, Mathura Road, and thereafter went ahead to do St. Stephen's College History Honours. Now, I was all throughout a history student and art students. I had no connection with technology. I used to run away from science and mathematics, though I got a 99% in mathematics in the 12th class, primarily because I was in humanities and I wanted to take a subject which could help me get some more marks. But once I was into history during graduation, again, technology was miles away from me. I went on to do my Campus Law Center, Faculty of Law, my LLB there, and then began as a normal civil and corporate lawyer in the lowest courts of the country, being the
Yes. And which year was this? When did you do your graduation in history and law?
Well, I finished my graduation in history from 82 to 85 in St. Stephen's College, and the law was from 85 to 88 from the Faculty of Law, Campus Law Center.
Amazing. So because I did my history honors in Delhi University 89, 92, and then law after that from Campus Law Center. So wow. we have that in common. I never thought you don't have a technology background in your graduation. This is a big breaking news for me.
No, in fact, never it was. And I always thought, look, I had some old visions about the legal profession. I said, look,
Joe, Dr. Duggal, before you say that this transition from the regular practice to the birth of the technology and the cyber and lawyer which happened, you must have seen a word. I'll just read a very small 2-line share of Rajesh Reddy. He's very respected. He's a South Indian, but he's a shair. He said, "Jamane ko nahi, jiski jarurat, main shayad wo jaruri aadmi ho."
क्या बात है, बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत बढ़िया. जी.
अब आप बताएं. You tell us, how did it happen?
Well, I think I never believe that we are in control of what we do. On the other hand, when I look in retrospect, लगता है कि कुछ चीजें होनी होती हैं, वो हो जाती हैं, आपको पता नहीं लगता. So I began a normal civil and corporate lawyer practice in 1988 in Tisazari. Mind you, those were very, very traditional kind of days, hardly any technology anywhere around. And by the time it was early 90s, I got some clients who had some software related work. That
Uh,
was for the first time I got interested in software and technology, but again, from a user perspective, not from a technical perspective. But once that interest arose, I was looking for new avenues of how to take this a bit further, because I looked at the fact that the law was developing, but a bit slowly in the West as well. And then 1995 internet came along. And the first 2 months of access to the internet were like a completely dream world. One didn't know what was day, one didn't know what was night. Those were the days when the speed was 14.4, and you have to dial in through a dial in modem and then wait on.
when was your first brush with internet in India, sir?
That was immediately after it got introduced in India in 1995. So that was
Oh,
in almost about September, end of October
oh.
1995. And then I got enamored by this entire medium because we had never seen anything like this. But after 2 months of madness, when I began to start putting my pieces in order, I realized this could be the medium that could be fundamentally changing the future. And I said, okay, let me look around and start seeing, are there any legalities to the same? Because as a lawyer, you are trained to look at legal issues.
Absolutely.
So I looked around and I said, look, there was nothing like that. The state of Utah and the US was just about beginning to get started with its first national state cyber law. And that was the first state in the world to do so. So I started getting interested in this. I started spending more time. My father, who was also a civil and corporate lawyer, he was very, very intrigued by my this very irregular behavior patterns. He objected and he said, look, Pawan, you're wasting your time. These are trends that come and go. So please don't focus much on here. Please focus back on your main civil and corporate practice. I told him, I said, I will cut down on all my activities, but allow me to experiment in this particular space. He said, so long as your practice doesn't suffer, please go ahead and do anything. So I cut down all my social activities, and it was just the courts, and then straight away it was back to the internet. And those were the days. But from the very beginning, I thought, look, when internet had come in India in 1995, it had already been at a global space for more than 25 years. India was much later entrant to the entire internet bandwagon history. But I realized that if the last 25 years has moved that slowly, in the next 25 years, it should potentially be moving very, very fastly. Primarily because as more and more people come onto the bandwagon, the technologies will get more secure, more fast, more robust. And therefore, I started focusing on that. That time, there was nothing happening, neither here nor even in the West. Yes, it was only 1998 that we saw the ICANN coming in, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. And I got involved with ICANN from the very beginning, first as a member of its Membership Advisory Committee, then Membership Implementation Task Force. And a couple of years later, I became the member of the Nominating Committee of ICANN. But while all this was happening, the General Assembly of the United Nations, way back in January 1997, had already passed and recommended the UNCITRAL Model Law on Electronic Commerce.
Okay.
That was a law that was recommended to all nation states, asking them to come up with national laws on promoting e-commerce and electronic governance. So in India, things started happening. Two different ministries simultaneously started working on this, two different drafts. That's the time I got started getting more involved here. Then by the time the IT Bill 1999 came across, I was extensively involved with the then department and also with various parliamentarians, because when it came to the parliament, it was referred to the the Standing Parliamentary Committee, and then giving inputs and stuff like that.
So it's a very important thing, sir. 95, when you say that we got internet in India, we were already late by how many years in comparison to United Kingdom or US?
Well, traditionally speaking, the internet got introduced way back in 1969 with ARPANET in the US. It actually had come up and become big time in academic universities in the early 80s. However, we were only late to the party by 2 or 3 years, primarily because it was early 90s that Sir Tim Berners-Lee had come up with the World Wide Web, which was a new way of accessing the internet, which became much more easier. So the West was much ahead of us, but these 2-3 years, we had seen some extensive work happening there in terms of domain name disputes and litigations. So we came a bit late,
So,
but we picked up.
yeah. Sir, what has happened? Like India has this history of being we are normally seen as backbenchers in most of the things, whether it's technology, manufacturing, agriculture. Our agriculture is quite sluggish all the time. But when it comes to IT, and that became our best story in 1990s, and as you rightly said, in post 2000, like TCS, nobody thought that TCS kind of company and HCL kind of company will be ruling the world, and Infosys. So, what was in India's favor? And how did you think the ecosystem was created? This is something which a lot of people have asked. How this propelling of how this pack of dogs model happened in India, and how did this become a movement in India? The whole IT, the whole cyber thing. It's going even now with Blinkits happening, with Ola happening. Like we are much ahead than the world. Direct transfer to the accounts of people, digitization, digital money. How did we go so fast?
Well, I think it was primarily got to do with the intrinsic intelligence of Indians as a nation and Indians as a population. Why? Because Indians are very, very savvy in terms of finding different ways of innovating solutions to the problem. So I call it the Indian Jugaad School of Management.
Correct.
The Indian Jugaad School of Management was very alive and active, and that actually propelled the Indian minds to start adopting. I remember early days when the back office operations were just about beginning. Indians very quickly realized that India could be a great and very economical back office to the world. And lo and behold, early 2000s, we began seeing massive increase in business process outsourcing.
Correct.
Further, software was always a kind of a technological strength as far as Indians were concerned, though Indians were being seen more as people who would go ahead and deliver for someone else rather than leading by example. So we became great in terms of delivering software services. We tended to consolidate on our strengths on software and IT. And that's why by the time, I remember in the late 1990s, we saw a lot of tremendous interest in the dot-com. There was a dot-com boom. And then early 2000s, there was a dot-com bust. And after that, the enthusiasms were slightly were disillusioned. But very quickly, we were able to come up. The reason was very simple was that the government was not interfering. The government was still alive to its own day-to-day problems and was not going into active management or regulation of the ecosystem. That allowed the ecosystem to grow at a massive pace. And that's the reason why we leapfrogged into the next level, as a result of which we achieved what we actually did those days.
And how much you see our laws, which is your cup of tea. You have written so many books also, and perhaps somebody was telling me that the kind of books which you have written, they are very practical books, unlike a lot of jurisprudence kind of books, but your books are very user friendly. As a lawyer, when you write, it makes a lot of sense. So what was the reason for you writing? Because I've seen that when you write some of the books we also have in our office, the one reason would be that you really want people to go into this area. What do you see the future of cyber, IT, because still there is no focused practice happening. A big law firm will be working for WhatsApp or Meta or Facebook or like music apps. We work for a few of them, but it is not getting defined. Like IPR is defined, tax is defined. What is the struggle we are facing there?
The problem is people tend to see technology as an integral part of what they do. So the tremendous reliance upon technology as a for-granted factor is the reason why we don't really see technology as a specific practice. But that was the same question that my father had asked me when I actually came into the space. He says, well, civil and commercial and criminal will always continue, but cyber will one day subsume everything. So what will happen to you? And that was a question that was always I was trying to answer. And I realized that, well, when cyber grows that big, there'll be immense amount of need for people having expertise in cyber to get their respective inputs into various verticals of activities. So when I began very early, I got some books from the Western world, and I realized that they were written from a Western prism and Western perspective. And I couldn't find any kind of a content. So I decided, let me start putting in 1 hour a day every morning. And every morning I started writing for 1 hour a day. And that practice has been continuing for the last more than 25 plus years. And over a period of time, it led to various books of mine that came across. See, I always believe that as a lawyer, I don't have time. Any lawyer doesn't have time. So nobody wants to know the gyan. Everybody wants to know how does it impact me in a practical, pragmatic manner,
So true.
and how can I take it forward.
So
So I chose to adopt that particular approach in writing my books so that it can make sense to the practitioners per se. Today, we've actually come a long way. Now, thanks to COVID, we've achieved what we thought we could only achieve in the next 10 or 15 years. We were able
correct.
to achieve that in 2 years. Now,
Correct.
as a result, now it's a different ball game altogether. I think cyber and tech practices are going to grow phenomenally bigger because the cyber nuances are now impacting every stakeholder in their day-to-day activities, into their business operations, and much that there are general law firms which will be advising them. There will always be need for specialist lawyers who can
Yeah.
come up with specialist inputs in this regard.
That is the one reason why people like they will go to basically Praveen Anand for a tricky IPR issue. If it's a tricky, even law firms will go to them, even if they run a law firm, or they will come to you for cyber. And in some cases, people come to me for environment, whether it's anything from any firm it comes, query, whether it's a plastic or environment. I would say, sir, that when you were always so optimistic about cyber and IT, against all the pessimism, and I also asked the same thing, that there would be some kind of pessimism about it. इस पर एक और शेयर है, छोटा सा, दो लाइन का ही, आपको भी लास्ट में एक बड़ा भी आएगा.
Sure.
मैं रोशनी था, मुझे फैलते ही जाना था. मैं रोशनी था, मुझे फैलते ही जाना था. वो बुझ गए जो समझते रहे चिराग मुझे.
क्या बात, बहुत बढ़िया, बेहतरीन, बहुत बढ़िया.
हाँ, so ये जो next issue है कि how tech savvy you are, how much with the COVID, with these courts on all now on digital platform, how much, what was the COVID journey for you? How you were juggling between courts? What are the kind of apps? What are the kind of apps you use normally on a daily basis? And what do you recommend lawyers that they should know these apps? They should know these kind of technology tools for furthering their practice.
Well, the COVID has been a great kind of a game changer and a great wake-up call for me individually. Why? Because we were presuming that life will continue in the normal, smaller pace or a slower pace, but COVID changed everything. And in these two COVID times, there were two elements that are very studiously examined in everybody's life. That were fear and panic. Okay. And these were responsible for a lot of us, obviously illogical and unpractical decisions as well. And I utilized the COVID-19 time in order to brush my skill sets vis-a-vis technology in terms of trying to see how can we get maximize output out of technology. I can tell you, I've experimented with so many apps, with so many technologies, and I can tell you there are no golden standards, there are no golden foundational principles, each one to their own. It ultimately depends upon what you really want to do vis-a-vis technology. But one thing I've realized is that there has now become an urgent need for us to start recording everything. Not because the great Indian vomiting revolution is going across, not because Indians are recording everything, but primarily as a means and as a tool for analyzing your thought processes as you go forward. So I managed to do almost more than 1,000 plus kind of webinars and so these kind of events during the COVID times. And I recorded each one of them. And every time I recorded them, I would play them first thing in the morning after I would finish my writing to see, look, what is it that I missed? What was the question that was asked? What is it that you can actually build on that? And that I thought was a great learning tool. So technology became very handy in that regard. Artificial intelligence is also a good technology, but right now it's still at an early stage vis-a-vis its deployment in the Indian context, but it's soon going to be playing a very important role. No law firm, no lawyer can today say, I will not care about technology. Technology will have to be a very important stepping stone for your further growth and progress. And now clients want you to be very tech savvy and want you to only use a particular platform because they are consciously careful about their data. They don't want their data to be unauthorizedly accessed. And now a number of clients only want to communicate via fully end-to-end encrypted platforms.
Yeah. So this is a massive change. I remember In 2020, just before the pandemic exploded, I was in Hyderabad airport and one of the clients insisted, because the COVID was lurking around, they insisted that I should come on a Zoom. I had no idea what is this. So my partner was with me. She had to download that platform. And then we were like so perplexed. What is happening? Why should we do this? What was it? And today it is part of our life. And you are also saying that a lot of clients actually insist, no, we don't do it on Zoom. We will do it on some other platform. And this is so much part of our life. I remember that lawyers have now working remotely. We could never imagine this. We are briefing all of you all the time. There are 4 laptops and they all are appearing in multiple courts. In fact, I think majority of the lawyers and law firms who have little access to technology, they don't want to go back to the court. They are not very keen to go back to the court because it saves money, it saves time, it saves the environment. So what are your thoughts? You think it's a future where we should, and you see that happening more and more with Justice Chandrachud taking over that technology because he was very fascinated by this.
I think the coming of Justice Chandrachud as the next Chief Justice of India is going to usher in a new era of technological growth and adoption in the Indian judicial ecosystem as a whole. This is, when the topmost judge is so tech savvy and has got an intrinsic understanding
Absolutely.
of the technological paradigm, it is bound to trickle down onto the entire system, and it's bound to make some massive changes. So I expect that his tenure should be full of new milestones, new adoption of new technologies, and new reliance of technological paradigms for the purposes of not just promoting the expeditious administration of justice, but also for ensuring that the justice is delivered in an effective manner to every stakeholder who comes and knocks the doors of the courts per se. Even otherwise, it makes logical sense. COVID has actually taught us numerous lessons. And one key lesson is that if we are not going to build and consolidate on the gains technologically that we have done during COVID-19, then it may ultimately be a waste of time because we don't want to come back to that same cycle of pre-COVID. So I expect life would completely change. And if the change is going to be driven by the Chief Justice of India, I think we're going to see some massive new developments in this regard.
Yeah, because he has been, even when we are appearing before him physically, he is not keeping anything. He has his laptops, his iPads, and he's so hands-on and he's using it all the time. Sir, 2-3 important steps we will like to hear from you. One is this whole privacy thing in India. How much we guard our privacy and how much these multinational companies which operate in India, you must have encountered many such cases. So what happens, there are 2 aspects to it. One is the privacy part. The second thing is where the data is kept. Is it kept in India or is it kept outside India? A lot of people ask about these things, and we are, as a nation, as you rightly said initially also, we are a little careless, large-hearted. We don't really care that much. But in other jurisdictions, we are told a lot of serious debates happens. We saw Facebook founder being paraded before many parliaments and giving answer that what do you do with your data? So what are your thoughts about these stuff in India? Are we at par with the world?
I think we are not at par with the world. We are slightly behind the curve vis-a-vis these new technological developments and privacy. But at the same time, India has got this massive advantage of leapfrogging and getting to the head of the herd, if we can say. But the problem is practically, we are being bogged down because of a unique policy vacuum that's existing in the Indian context. Well, though the Indian Supreme Court in Justice Puttaswamy versus Union of India declared that all of us Indians have a fundamental right to privacy as part of our fundamental right to life, the fact still remains that as of today, India does not have any dedicated law on privacy. We don't have a dedicated law on data protection. We do not have a law on cybersecurity. And we also don't have a dedicated law on online consumer protection. So these 4 absence of these very crucial pillars actually creates a very unique kind of an ecosystem where our privacy tends to be targeted, both personal privacy and data privacy at will by big tech companies. And it all got demonstrated by the WhatsApp unilaterally changing its terms and conditions and asking Indians to either accept it or vacate their platform.
Absolutely.
I think Indians have now begun to start having an expectation that their privacy ought to be protected, both personal privacy and data privacy, and that can be taken away only by the process of law. But because there is no process of law, there's a lot of policy vacuum out there. Also, I think Indians are by and large very callous about
Careless.
privacy.
Yeah.
They don't really mind. If I was to today set up a coffee stall at an airport in any Indian airport, and I was to say I would to give you my free coffee, provided you just give me your personal data, I
You
can
will
tell
get
you that out of 100 cups of coffee that I will sell, I mean 100 people that will come in, almost about 90% of the people will say, take my data and give me coffee. I think the awareness about protecting your personal privacy is crucial,
very
which is
well.
currently missing.
Very well said.
What we don't forget, what we forget is that if we are not going to be careful, this privacy once gone is never going to come back. Because
So,
once your personal data is out there, you're going to be prejudicially impacted for life. And therefore, बड़ा पुरानी कहावत है, जहां से जागे वहीं से सवेरा समझें.
why is
अगर
it?
हम आज जग जाते हैं, and if we really start protecting whatever little remains of our privacy, then over a long period of time, those kind of gains can be consolidated. लेकिन उसके लिए जरूरत है कि आप लोगों को ज्यादा अवेयर बनाइए, जागरूक
Correct.
बनाइए, सतर्क बनाएं, and
Because
capacity building.
we are a large population, we are a very large consumer now. Sir, एक बात जो हमेशा आती है कि since you are so much into thick of these cases, judgment, internet related judgment, privacy, at least there'll be 1, 2, or 3 judgments you would like to share with us, which are landmark for the world, not only for India, which India initiated. Do you think, like in environment, if you'll say, I'll say Godavari University, Union of India, we got an order where we said that even if a small branch of a tree can't be felled if it's a tiger reserve. So that was a landmark thing which was implemented in Congo, Kenya, Namibia, and other places. So is there something which has been passed in India, 1 or 2 judgments which will recommend to our viewers, which are landmark? They should read this judgment.
I think the first instance that comes to my mind is the judgment in the case of X versus Union of India. This is a judgment that's been delivered by the Delhi High Court in 2021. And that's a landmark judgment because I find that judgment one of the most progressive judgments of recent times, because this judgment was actually on a very important issue which almost all of us face. Here was a law school student, girl, who was studying law, who had normally posed with normal photographs on Facebook, but because her peer group wanted to get after her, they copied her face from that photographs and morphed it artificially on the pictures of nude models and published it on pornographic websites. She asked pornographic websites to pull down content, they did not. She asked the service providers to take action, they did not. So finally, she comes in a writ petition to the Delhi High Court. So the Delhi High Court looks at what is the position. The Delhi High Court examines the entire legal position internationally, appoints me as the amicus curiae. I'm able to assist the court as to what's internationally happening and what India can do where we can leapfrog much ahead than others. And I give various suggestions on the basis of which the Delhi High Court passes this landmark judgment where they say, look, you cannot be mute spectators. Today, problem is ever since Shriya Singhal judgment came across, big tech companies and intermediaries became mute spectators while mayhem was happening on the network because the Supreme Court said, don't act till such time you get a court order or an order from a governmental agency. Now, in this landmark judgment, the Delhi High Court has not only said that it's your mandatory duty to remove such any kind of offensive or obscene content within 24 hours, and they relied upon the provisions of the IT rules 2021. But more significantly, the Delhi High Court has said you will have to remove it globally. Now, this is something that most of the courts across the world have been very hesitant in walking that particular path. But the Delhi High Court said, if you are not going to remove the said offending content globally, it doesn't make any sense that you remove it only within India because people use technologies like VPN for the purposes of going ahead and accessing the said content. The court also looked at the entire blocking powers given to the government and said that the blocking is not a very effective scenario and therefore came up with detailed rights, duties, and obligations for various stakeholders that have to be followed mandatorily post the IT rules 2021. So that's one big judgment that I expect everybody should definitely read. It gives you a very extensive analysis of the global scenario and then proceeds to leapfrog in a much, much progressive manner, much ahead than other judgments across the world.
We are just last leg of the time, sir. But one very important question, I face it all the time. We represent a lot of media houses. And what happens? Somebody writes about our editor or something on LinkedIn or Facebook or some kind of platform and Instagram, and then that this has happened. This man is not good. Now we sue in the legal notice the intermediary, the platform, as a publishing house, because we said that you have provided. But how easy or difficult it is to take it to the logical conclusion?
I think there are a lot of gaps that still exist. The
Yes.
government has come up with the IT rules 2021. You are now required as an intermediary to have a grievance redressal mechanism and a procedure. But the problem is the law is not being effectively implemented. Most of them have either very shoddy procedures or have no procedures. And whatever procedures they have, they often don't implement those procedures. With the result, getting remedy or relief from a client's perspective becomes a very, very tall order. So I think we need to get more proactive towards providing effective remedies. If you're going to do a cyber matter, I don't want to do a cyber matter which is going to go into next 10, 12, 15 years. Today in 2022, I'm doing a matter of 2002 on a cybercrime matter, which is still on stage 1. So, I mean, we have to clearly give a sense of urgency to cyber matters and sense of relief, because on the internet, one particular minute is more than a week of time. So, and if you are not going to give people effective remedies, then damage is irreversible and they will be prejudicially impacted for all times to come.
Amazing. Sir, we are at the end of our program. I just have a very interesting share by Tahzeeb Hafi. It's a little long, but you will enjoy it. It has very deepness. थोड़ा लंबा है सर, परमिट करें तो मैं पढ़ता हूँ.
प्लीज बताइए.
तेरा चुप रहना मेरे जेहन में क्या बैठ गया, इतनी आवाजें तुझे दी कि गला बैठ गया. यूं नहीं है कि फकत मैं ही उसे चाहता हूं, यूं नहीं है कि फकत मैं ही उसे चाहता हूं, जो भी उस पेड़ की छांव में गया बैठ गया. इतना मीठा था वो, गुस्से भरा लहजा मत पूछ, उसने जिस जिसको भी जाने को कहा वो बैठ गया. अपना लड़ना भी मोहब्बत है, तुम्हें इल्म नहीं, चीखती तुम रही और मेरा गला बैठ गया. उसकी मर्जी वो जिसे पास बैठा ले अपने, इस पे क्या लड़ना, फला मेरी जगह बैठ गया. बात दरियाओं की सूरज की न तेरी है यहां, दो कदम जो भी मेरे साथ चला वो बैठ गया. बज़ में जाना में नशिस्ते नहीं होती मखसूस, जो भी एक बार जहां बैठ गया वो वहीं बैठ गया. Tahzeeb Hafi. It's about a very deepness on many counts. I just thought you would like it. I can send it to you also.
Please.
He's a very young poet and very respected. So, sir, many thanks for this interview. This is a very detailed topic, very detailed subject. This can't be covered in a 30 minutes format. But one parting thing which I want to ask you is, what do you think it takes a lawyer to succeed in legal profession? What is one mantra which you have followed or learned from your father?
The only one mantra that I've learned from my father is you don't get success easily. Success is a tough taskmaster. You have to do constant hard work, effort, burn your midnight to oil, and then do your best that you can do. Of course, luck plays an important role, but there's no substitute for hard work. You'll have to constantly keep on toiling hard and constantly diving deep. You'll get many distractions. There'll be many discouragements, but please continue with your path, because at the end of the day, your hard work is never going to go in vain. It's always going to come back with glorious results for you in the times to come. So, मेहनत और मेहनत एकमात्र ही आपका मंत्र होना पड़ेगा जब आप वकालत में आएंगे, लीगल प्रोफेशन में आएंगे, क्योंकि ये मेहनत ही आपकी आने वाले समय में आपके लिए रंग लाएगी, आपकी क्लाइंट्स के लिए रंग लाएगी, और आप समाज को भी एक सकारात्मक रूप से प्रभावित कर पाएंगे और उसे प्रोग्रेसिवली इम्पैक्ट भी कर पाएंगे.
Thank you, Dr. Pawan Dugal, for coming on my show and interacting with me. It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Bye-bye, sir. Take care, sir. Bye-bye.